Hello and welcome to the first episode of Pickle TV. I'm your host, Gary Leland. Now, if you found this show on Facebook, your Apple TV, YouTube, or any place else, please check out my website, www.pickle.tv. It's the home of Pickle TV, and it'll be the place to find all the videos I'll record in the future, because like I said, this is the first one, from all the conferences I hope to attend. Now, if you're enjoying the concept of seeing these tech conferences for free, I mean, you really should check out Pickle TV, and please tell your friends about it. If you don't mind, post on Facebook about it or your Twitter or whatever. Help me get this to grow here, okay? Now, in this episode, I'm bringing you the keynote speech from the Emerging Tech Conference held. It was held in Grapevine, Texas in June of this year, 2012. And if you're not familiar with this conference, it's a new conference. This was the first year. You really should go check out the website for the conference. And the website's located at etcdallas.com. That's the place you can find about last year's conference, and you'll be able to keep up with next year's conference too. Now, the keynote speaker was Sean Jackson. Sean is a founding partner of Copyblogger, the creators of Copyblogger.com, StudioPress, Genesis, Scribe, Premise, and the Synthesis WordPress hosting. Now, Sean is often referred to as the geek that speaks. Sean has a true passion for technology and how it's applied to the needs of marketing. Now, Sean's keynote is titled The Truth About Content Marketing. Now, let's go to the keynote and see what Sean has to say.
Staff, I personally want to thank you for coming out here. It's going to be tough to have anything related to content marketing in the backyard of Copyblogger Media, so you have to deal with me for the next 45 minutes, and I hope it is worth your time today. By show of hands, does anybody know who the hell Copyblogger is, or our products, etc.? So good mix of it. So just as a way of kind of background, why the hell I'm standing here, Copyblogger started in 2006 by Brian Clark. It's a blog site. And he started writing, and because he built a worldwide audience from this blog, people would come to him and say, we want to partner with you because we've got these great products we think they'd be for your, great for your audience out there. So Brian actually ended up taking these people, which I was one of them, and said, look, let's form a company together, because I've got the audience, and I know nothing about technology, you know about technology, and you need an audience, so let's put this all together. So in 2010, the five of us flew to Denver, we put the company together, and this is the mix of it. So anyone uses anything from StudioPress, the Genesis framework? Just good, yes, it's the #1 theme framework in the world, according to Mashable. We have products like Premise, we have products like Scribe, educational products like Teach and Sells, Third Drive, and of course, our dedicated WordPress hosting company. And what is amazing to me is, as a fairly large company in the online marketing space, this entire idea was started because of writing. I mean, think about it. We have over 90,000 customers worldwide, and it all started with writing, by refining the craft of storytelling, of copywriting. And so really, as in the Marines, they say every Marine is a rifleman. Well, everyone in Copyblogger is a writer. Whether you want to be or not, you have to have the basic foundations of writing, because it is the center point of all content marketing. So in that vein, it would not be out of turn for me to start our discussion on content marketing with a very important question. Very important. You ready? Probably most important. Do you hunt or farm? What? What is he talking about? Let me explain. You see, at the dawn of modern man, we were hunters, right? We would go out there and we would try to kill something, and we would hopefully find it, kill it, bring that meat back, and we'd consume it, right? We'd send them out there going, you know, your quota for today is 2 mastodons and a rabbit, or something like that. We'd send them out into the field, and hopefully they would kill something and bring it back. We'd eat, and everyone would say, oh, the hunters are great, right? Then a couple of days later, it's like we're running out of meat. Hey, you lazy hunters, get your ass back out there. It's time to go hunt again. And so we would do this. And then we would kill everything that we could find, and then we found that the weather sucked and it wasn't great, so we would end up moving. So in early modern man's history, we were quite transitory in nature, right? We would go out there. In fact, the first use of the word pivot was actually back then because they had to pivot. They had to move to new places. But then something interesting happened. Around 8500 BC, we invented farming. Now, farming was radically different than hunting, right? I mean, farming required you to stay in one place. It required you to put things in the ground, let them grow up, right? It took a different type of skill set to occur. And one of the things about farming is that it allowed us to create a new type of sustenance so that we could store it for the long term, that we could stay in a particular place and time, right? And by having that as a part of our ecosystem, we were able to sit there and do something great. We could build modern civilization. Think about it. Modern civilization, be it the Mayans, the Romans, the Greeks, I mean, any civilization you think of, could only occur because of a couple of things. One, that the supply of food was both consistent, and two, it did not require the entire resources of the ecosystem in order to provide. Because by having farming, we could, yes, we would spend a lot of our people on that, but we also had a lot of free time. And because of that free time, and we were in one place, we started to build things, like, pyramids and buildings, and we could stay in one place at one time. So because of farming, the organization was actually able to achieve greatness. Because we did not have to, like our ancestors, constantly be in this recurring cycle of hunting for food, kill it, bring it back to the organization, consume it, and then send them out again, and then move on and on. We could build great things because of our farming background. What's interesting, though, is that farming actually would have been introduced a lot sooner, except for this one rarely documented episode. Ugai has this great idea in 8600 BC. And Ugai says to his chief, I got this great idea. Instead of us going around and constantly hunting for things, etc., I'm going to go into this valley here. And I think this valley has got good ground, and the weather seems to be nice around here. And I think if we start planting some rows and throwing some seeds out there and giving it some time, we can grow up and we can have this new type of sustenance with grains and fruits and vegetables and all these things, so that we're not constantly having to go out there and spend resources on this hunting thing. And the chief looks at him and goes, Ugai, really have to applaud your out of the tribe thinking here, but I really don't get this. What is the ROI of this farming thing? What is the cost per seed basis? I tell you what, you do this farming, planting things, that was called planting. You plant for a week, and at the end of the week, if you can generate about 20 pounds of meat, then we may consider this. But, we're really a hunting organization. We're not really this farming thing, but, hats off to you. Obviously, they were talking about two different things, right? Obviously, there was resistance to this idea, and knowing, as we do now, the benefit of it, we faced that type of resistance. And the reason I use this analogy, if you will, is because content marketing is much like farming. Sales is a lot like hunting, right? We hire salespeople, we send them out with the tools they need and go kill something today. And when they kill something big, we think they're heroes, and then they suck because they hadn't killed anything, right? But as content marketers, we're farming, we're cultivating the ground, we are sitting there taking time to grow something that yields much higher for the output of work than hunting does. And there's no surprise that content marketing has been around for quite some time. Modern content marketing started in 1895, ironically enough, with the John Deere Corporation and their magazine, The Furrow, which was targeting farmers. They probably got this idea because they saw the benefit of farming, and so they started in 1895. And then, of course, right after that, Michelin Corporation, which kills me. Cars were so new at the time, the Michelin company created up this guide. I guess it was to say, those back roads are so shitty, maybe we should tell people to go on these back roads and wear out their tires so we can get more tires sold. And then, of course, we have Jell-O, who introduces a cooking guide that was hugely successful. And again, this graph, by the way, is from Content Marketing Institute. By all means, you need to look at it further. But it illustrates one of the points that I want to make, which is that what we really started to see is institutionalized content marketing. It started in 1930 by the Procter & Gamble Corporation. See, Procter & Gamble had this additive chemical that they wanted to sell. It was fairly commoditized, but they had this additive chemical. And they said, you know, it's the Depression, we really need to reach wives and women in the home, and you know, we really need to find innovative ways. So maybe what we'll do is take a storytelling craft like what you see in an opera, right? With love and revenge and, you know, all these different emotions tied in there. And we'll take our ingredients, this chemical, and pair it with this operatic style thing, and we created up what is called a soap opera. Soap opera started in 1930. And it was totally a way to use content as a way to reach people in Depression-era houses who were spending more time at home with effective content marketing. And then over the years, many things happened, but I do like to point out 1982, because in 1982, the Hasbro Corporation decided to make parenting the most difficult job in the world, okay? And how did they do that? Well, they said, let's go over to these guys. This Hasbro said, let's go over to Marvel and have them create this magazine about G.I. Joe. We sell G.I. Joe, we'll create this magazine about it. It was so freaking successful that now modern toy marketing is all content marketing. It is cartoons, it is magazines, it is books, it is movies. You know, you want to talk about how successful it is they're doing cartoons like Pokemon. Pokemon is a cartoon, for goodness sake. It was a card game. But Pokemon not only has its own show, but people pay to advertise on the advertisement for the damn game. Isn't that crazy? That's modern marketing when it comes to toys, is all content marketing. And again, if you look at this chart from the Content Marketing Institute, you'll see all of these different examples. But then something happened in the 1990s. We had this thing called the web. And as marketers, we were so used to print and radio and TV. You know, our world was fairly nicely defined as marketers. We had just a very few media out there that we had to consider. But then the web comes up and it offers all of these solutions. And then search marketing comes up and it offers all of this new outlet. And then social media comes up. And all of these things now start to bombard us because now we have all these different channels out there, right? We have all these different options. I mean, think about it. In the 1970s, we had about 5, 6 different media outlets that we had to contend with. Today, it's in the hundreds, if not thousands. So as marketers, we were confused. We were like, oh my gosh, we know the principles of marketing, but we got all this new stuff. What the hell? So we invented a new language. The language of bullshit. We started looking at this landscape, and in talking to others about this, we started using this language of awareness, user generation, synergy, right? Viral, reciprocity, influence, mindshare, brand awareness. These were all the things that were the benefits of this thing called marketing, right? Online, right? This was what we were selling. This is the conversations we were having to people. Unfortunately, we forgot the one thing that really mattered, and that's this. Money. At the end of the day, we are in a commercial business. Our efforts are there to generate money. It is a conversation that is often lost in pitches that I've heard from agencies and things that we go out there at conferences. Rarely do we talk about the thing that really, really matters the most, the language of money. And to put it in a way that I think is the most succinct, is certainly from the legendary fictional ad man, Don Draper. I sell products. I don't sell advertising. In this space, that's what we do. We sell products. We don't sell social media, we don't sell Facebook, we don't sell anything. We sell products or services. So I got to thinking, why is it that we forgot this? Because we've known that content marketing has been around, and we've known the principles of good marketing, which is to generate money. But then all of these options come up, and we completely pollute the conversation. And I think it is because we have to fundamentally appreciate the unique nature of content marketing. Content marketing, in comparison to the traditional sales, right, hiring a salesperson, has two functions: results over time, right? So in traditional sales, right, we have this blue line, right, so that the results over time for sales is fairly linear, right? The more salespeople, the more resources you put to it, it's pretty much a straight shot up, right? And it's something that we can see immediate, right? You get a salesperson, hopefully they go out and sell something, they kill the mastodon, you know, bring it back, and we eat, and we say, woo, yay, salespeople are freaking awesome. And we can see those results. But the farmer, the content marketer, he's got to plant, or she's got to plant some ground, right? She's got to build it up. And slowly over time, we get an inflection point where the results of the content marketing effort actually exceed that of the sales. That's why we talk about this bullshit concept of ROI. Okay? ROI. What is the ROI on this? What is the cost per tweet? You know, I spend this money, what is the return on investment going to be? Which I've written about this, and you can argue with me all day long, but I'm right. Which is there is no ROI in social media or content marketing. There is not. It's called a freaking profit. Which is what we're in business to do, is to make a profit. At the end of the day, everything comes down to it. So in the beginning, we have these, you know, conversations trying to convince ourselves or others about the return on investment, much like the farmer trying to explain to them the cost per seed planted, as opposed to once we have it, we're like, wow, geez, we don't talk about these things. We don't care about Facebook or Twitter or any of this stuff. We just know that content marketing works. We're looking for media outlets. We're looking for channels because we are talking the language of profit and we know that it works. So, the characteristics of content marketing. First, it is highly cost effective. The cost to do content marketing is extremely low in comparison to every other channel out there. Try to put a Super Bowl ad and you take that money and you pretty much could do an entire content marketing campaign for one 30-second spot in the Super Bowl. Secondly, it is sustainable for the long term. This is something that, again, much like our ancestors who did not have to go roam around the countryside to kill and eat, they could stay in one place, they could build institutions over the long term because of their farming activity. And best of all, it does form the center point of our online marketing strategy. It is the cornerstone. I'm going to talk a lot more about this. It is the center point to everything when you're dealing online. And finally, it does lower cost, right? Because if we're not having to spend money on things like we used to, like, you know, buying the billboard for $10,000 on Central Expressway, right? And we can achieve same results for less cost, while at the same time increasing our revenue, it is what generates profit. The conversation is about how does, you know, Twitsphere or whatever, you know, my book or whatever the hell these things are out there. All I want to know is how does it lower my cost and hopefully increase my revenue? Because then it makes the word profit much easier to talk about. That's how you think about these things. However, this is the tough part. Content marketing takes time and talent, right? And I would argue most marketing takes talent, right? I mean, good marketing, we know it has an artistic craft. We used to call it the commercial arts. Now, it does take time. It does take talent to produce, and sometimes it's hard to find both of those. Secondly, results accumulate over time. See, the hunter, the sales guy, he can go kill the big, you know, the deer, right? He can bring in the big client. And so he's got a huge spike. The poor farmer, the content marketer, his results are building. His brains are building up over time, right? So his variance is fairly low, but when you look at it over time in aggregate, it is extremely high. The other thing, content marketing is not sales. You're not going to have this conversation. Well, I heard about this Twitter thing, and let's go over to the Twitter account today, and we're going to sell 20,000 units tomorrow, right? I mean, you wouldn't do it. I mean, you look at somebody and go, what the hell are they talking about? Because it's not sales. What content marketing is selling. It is the process of selling that what is content marketing. That's why we sometimes lose sight that there is a place for sales and there is a place for content marketing. And content marketing is selling. I will tell you the happiest salespeople in the world are people that have a solid foundation of content marketing behind them. Copyblogger has never had a salesperson in its entire history until about April of this year. And her role is a relationship manager. And in that relationship management, she is talking to people that come to us. Imagine that. I mean, we don't do outbound calls. They come to us. They say, we want your products. We want your services. And I will tell you that having a conversation with somebody who already knows your business, it is not selling. It's not a sales at that point. It is selling them. It is answering their question. It is a wholly different process than, hey, let me tell you about Copyblogger Media and all these things we did. What, huh? It is a whole different process because content marketing is selling. So let's talk about tactics, right? Let's talk about some tactics that we can use in the online space. This is how we normally look at online marketing. Fairly isolated, fairly individualistic, right? We got to do Facebook here. Like us on Facebook. What? Like, follow me on Twitter. Hey, plus me. Hey, I got a blog thing. Oh, got to get that shit on YouTube, right? Got to create a graph. Got to pin it, right? And that's what we look at it. Hey, I'm going to sell you Pinterest. Let me tell you about this new thing, Pinterest. Your business needs to be pinned. What? That's how we tend to look at this. But now I'm going to give you the secret where it all comes together. This is the architectural framework of how you engage in effective content marketing online. I will spend a little time on this. I know it works because we do it. At the top layer, we see our social media channels. That certainly includes search engines, and they should. But you have your search and social layer at the very top. The purpose of your search and social layer is to drive traffic to your site. The only thing you can control in this world, and I think Tony Wright from YMC has always given a passionate speech about the benefit of having your own site, but the idea is you have to drive them to your site. The problem is that in a lot of places, we focus solely on Twitter, right, and building our followers, or we focus solely on Facebook and building the likes or the fans we have on Google Pluses with our community there, with our circles. The reality is they exist solely, and search engines exist solely to drive traffic back to a site you control. And preferably a site that is being frequently updated with content, right? So that there is a reason for people to follow you or to friend you or to plus you or to circle you or whatever the thing is or to search for you, is because there is a unique source of content. And one of the best platforms, bar none, don't want to piss anybody off, but I will, is freaking WordPress to do it. WordPress absolutely has the largest amount of market share out there. That's not to say that Drupal and Joomla aren't important into the mix, but what is the most important is this idea of constant fresh source of content that is in your control, so that your social and search media is a driver to that site. You can be nice to people. Brian Clark, who does manage our Twitter account, he'll pop out a couple of things. He'll be nice to people. In fact, on average, I've done a study of this, and I presented it at PubCon, is that the average number of tweets of the top layer of online marketing experts is on average 9 to 12 tweets a day on average. Somebody like Chris Rogan tweets on average 50 times a day. Okay? But why are they doing this? Well, the composition of those tweets tend to be 50% unique content, 25% retweets, and 25% replies at. But 50%, if not more, is generated of unique content that is either driving them to their site or driving them to something in their subject matter space, but always publishing. But the deal is that you have to have something to talk about. But that's not enough. And this is where I think almost all content marketing breaks down and dies because they don't look at the last part of the equation, the call to action. You are in the business of generating results. You are in the business of generating profit. There is a process to generating a profit, and part of that process is getting people to do something. At a minimum, at a bare minimum, a site should have some way of getting email, and preferably some way of getting RSS. That could be in addition to getting comments. But at the core of it, you want to include at minimum these two factors. Why? Because for all the hype, email marketing still is the single most effective marketing out there, period. There's nothing like marketing to an organically grown in-house list to generate results. So you need to be thinking of ways to capture email. You need to be thinking of ways of why they should be subscribing to you. One of the big things that always amazes me is that if your social media channels get cut off, RSS is what's going to save you. Think about it. And if you don't think that Mark Zuckerberg can turn your account off, think again. Anybody hear of Merck Pharmaceutical Company? Anybody know that company? So Merck USA built a page at Facebook called facebook.com/Merck. They spent all this time and money and resources to do it. Then Merck Germany, which is a different company than Merck USA, both in the pharmaceutical business, by the way, goes to Facebook and says, hey, that page over there belongs to us, Merck Germany. And you know what? Facebook gave it to them. Merck USA is like, what the hell did you just do? And they're like, well, they had a right to get this. And USA said they sure as shit did not. And then went to lawsuit and had to settle out. So think about that. All that time and effort. You know, when Facebook went public, GM put out that they were pulling their advertising. What probably is not as commonly known is they spend $40 million a year on Facebook, $10 million on ads, $30 million on content. And yet, idiots like the Wall Street Journal have a Wall Street Journal Facebook only edition. What? You're going to trust Mark Zuckerberg for that? Hell no. You got one of the best valuable properties out there, drive them there. And once they're there, get them to do something. And at a bare minimum, it is email and RSS. If you take nothing else away from this conference, realize that if your site is not getting them to convert into something, then who cares what you're doing? Okay? There are some silver bullets. These silver bullets. Number one, constant content with authority. You must be in the process of generating content. Period, in discussion. That's what, content and content marketing is about. But it has to be with authority. If you really want a good resource on this, go to authorityrules.com. The white paper should still be there. It was written by Brian Clark. I think it is the most seminal piece of understandable work around why authority matters. We talk about things like the Milgram experiment, which, by the way, I could probably get half this room to build the other half of the room for less than $10 using the concepts of the Milgram experiment. I could get probably 90% of this room to give me at a minimum their bank account information by just putting a sign on the ATM saying broken and standing next to it in a security guard outfit. That's the power of authority. And by the way, if you doubt me, anyone ever see that movie, Catch Me If You Can, right, with Leonardo DiCaprio? One of the things that they didn't show in the movie is Frank Abernathy would go to a Dropbox at the end of the day, and he'd put a broken sign on it and see security guard, and just printed a security guard out that stood there. People would come to drop off their money bags. They just give it to them. That's how powerful authority is, okay? So when you are writing, when you're producing your content, it has to be authoritative in your space. I could go on, in fact, I've given entire presentations on the power of authority, how to get it, how to maintain it. But at the end, your first silver bullet is constant content with authority. Secondly, headlines matter. In journalism, we all know that the headline is what gets people to read the paper. In content marketing, it is the headline. I will tell you that in writing for Copyblogger, I will always start with the headline first, and I will spend weeks, if not a month or more, agonizing over what the headline is prior to actually writing the story. Brian's, one of his most seminal work was, magnetic headlines. It's still, to this day, consumed. It ranks up there for headlines. I mean, it is still the seminal work on the way and process of doing headlines. So, when you're looking at your content marketing strategy, as you're looking at your editorial calendars, you look at what you're going to write about, what you want to concentrate on is on the headline. Now, some people start with the idea of what they want to talk about, then create the headline. Others tend to start with the headline first, then figure out the idea, but it doesn't matter. The headline is where 50% of all time should be spent in the writing process. The next thing is listening with empathy. Now, Brian is truly one of the smartest people I've ever met in my entire life. And one of the things that and he's not a very social person, right? He hates giving presentations and he hates being in public. But what he does like to do is sit around and listen to people. And how he listens is listening to the conversations online, listening to the comments. He listens with empathy for others. In fact, if you meet Brian for the very first time in person, he's one of the nicest, most charming people. It's only after you become a business partner that he becomes a total dick. But other than that, he is one of the nicest people. Because he really cares. He cares about everyone, and he's listening, and he's always thinking through these things. And what do they really want? And that's, I think, something that is often lost in the art of writing, is listening with empathy. It is a discipline. It is a long-term discipline. It requires unbelievable amounts of focus. When Brian started in 2006, there was no clear path to monetizing this stuff. He was just writing. He had to go through several years before he could monetize that work. It was a long process. That's why the most important person in Copyblogger Media is Samantha Clark, Brian's wife, because she had to support him on these endeavors. It is a discipline for the long time. Realize that. It is every single day. There's nothing worse than starting a blog and having no one see it, or if they see it, no one comment on it, right? It takes time, but it will work. One of the success stories I always like to point out about this is there's a real estate development here in town that bought the Dallas Design District. The guy who bought that million square feet is a good friend of mine. We were having lunch and we were talking about social media. And he made the choice to invest in social media. We hired a wonderful, wonderful expert in the space. Her name is Kendall Shipler. She started a blog from scratch in a marketplace that really did not trust who the hell she was. She represented the landlord, right? The merchants, they were all artists, they didn't trust us. Within a year, that site was huge in that particular market. So much so that 67% of all apartment sales, because you built an apartment down there, 67% of all sales came from that blog. Think about it. And it was only because she wrote. And it was lonely, but she never gave up. And then finally, the last silver bullet, the most important silver bullet, you have to be a master of the call to action. And I put the capital A there on purpose. It is an action. You must have a call to action. You must become the master of it. Landing pages are something that really matter. That's why we have a product about it, because we know how important freaking landing pages are. We know how important it is to get them into some state where they want to give you information. Your homepage is probably not enough to get them to do a call to action. It is a science unto itself. These are the silver bullets. These are the things that are really freaking hard to do. Notice I don't have any, like, do this little trick to fool Google, right? I don't see on there liking on Facebook, right? Which I think is just asinine that people would spend advertising with the thing, facebook.com/my company name. Really? That's where you're going to spend your advertising dollars to drive to Facebook? These are the silver bullets. So let's talk about strategy. Now I'll give you the tactics, right? Everybody believe the tactics so far? Yes? Good. All right. So let's talk about strategy. Well, there's a lot of strategies to pursue, and this one Brian's been writing about kind of recently, and I think it really, it kind of resonates, especially with the audience that, the audience that I tend to hang around with. Star Wars. A Star Wars strategy, or as we like to call it, the Jedi Guide to Content Marketing. Anybody ever see Star Wars? I'm just kidding. Star Wars is probably the most iconic movie of modern age. It is certainly something that when it first appeared resonated throughout the populace. It was incredible, right? What's fascinating though is that when George Lucas started writing the script for what is now known as Episode 4, he actually stole the idea. And he stole it from a guy by the name of Joseph Campbell. Joseph created a book in 1949 called The Hero of a Thousand Faces, where he coined the term monomyth, taken from a James Joyce novel. And monomyth is actually what the structure of every heroic story we've ever read in modern history. Hence the term the hero's journey. There's actually 17 steps of the hero journey. George Lucas stole this directly. He cites this as the primary source by which he framed the entire Star Wars saga. The ordinary world up there at the top was living on Tatooine, right? The call to adventure was the message from Leia looking for help. The refusal of the call was when he says, I can't go out there. You know, Uncle Owen wants me to stay here. I can't go out there into space. Meeting the mentor was Obi-Wan. And crossing the threshold. Anyone want to take a gander at that one?
Yes.
No.
His uncle got killed. Uncle and aunt.
No. I thought so too. And I was wrong. Crossing the threshold was when they went to Mos Eisley for the first time. And remember when he did the Jedi mind thing? You know, these weren't the rules you're doing. Because he started to cross over into the mystical world. Remember, there was no mystical things that really happened in Luke's life until he saw this. That's part of it. That's certainly the journey. This is, by the way, a strategy that we as content marketers can absolutely use. Because, as you can see, the call to adventure is when somebody recognizes they actually have a problem, right? You know, I'm fat, I'm not good looking enough, I need to look better for this, I need to do whatever it is. I need to increase sales, I need to decrease expenses. Whatever their problem is the call to adventure. Where you come into play as marketers is you're Obi-Wan. You're Obi-Wan. You're the guy. You're the trusted person. The one that is giving them a magical talisman, by the way. That's something that's missing from this chart. Does anybody know the magical talisman that was given to Luke Skywalker? That ironically he didn't really use in the first movie? Lightsaber. That was the magical talisman, right? Think about it. You sit in the room, got it? Everybody looking at me like, you gotta be careful when you're doing Star Wars things. There's a lot of aficionados. But that was the magic talisman. To bring him towards that world. And that's kind of what you're giving them, is that talisman to help them on their journey, right? Luke needed the lightsaber to be part of the journey. Obi-Wan gave it to him. If you were Obi-Wan, you're giving the hero something to help them into the journey and helping them cross the threshold. Showing them, at least getting them to the place of the magical world that they're about to enter. And you're doing that in a way that generates money. Because at the end of the day, you're selling. So the monomyth marketing, which is a very effective strategy, is that your hero is your customer. Your company, your brand, your whatever is not the hero. The hero is someone else. In fact, in email correspondence internally, I asked Brian, who is our Luke Skywalker, right? Because you need something out there that is not you, because you're the Obi-Wan. The problem is the call to adventure. And I'll show you some examples of that here. But there's a problem. Sometimes those are real problems, some of the times they're made up problems, but they're problems. Your content is the hero's guide. You're the mentor. You're the guy that's helping. Building at all times knowledge, likability, and trust. Remember that. Your content is always working to build knowledge, likability, and trust. And then give them something that aids in their journey. Luke got a lightsaber. He got it for free too. You know how many people buy one of those things? Think about your side. What is it that you're offering that will guide them or aid them in their journey? What is the talisman? Because whatever that talisman is, that's what you're selling. That's what you were selling, is the talisman, the lucky charm, the thing that moves them further to the endpoint of their journey. That's why the monomyth strategy is very effective, because people are wanting support as they go through. What are a couple examples of that? Two most effective in modern times, in my opinion. Nike. Absolutely. They sell a commodity. It is a ripped off commodity in China. And they sell it better than anyone else out there. Look at this ad for just 1 second. Rate number 140. Uncommitted, preoccupied, disinterested, out of shape. Rate number 81. Unprepared, no heart, no nerve, no legs. Rank number 14, in no shape to lose. I don't need something to get back to number 1. I need opponents. Man, it's just, isn't it grippy? And who's the guy to get you there? Think about that. The hero is her. She's the hero. Nike is the guy that helps them on that journey. And then, of course, again, hugely effective. Does anybody know that guy?
Jared.
Jared, yes. Jared. Talk about, I mean, this blows me away. So this guy starts his journey, he's going, I'm obese. I'm morbidly obese. I'm fatter than I need to be. So what does he do? He gets off his ass and he goes down to the local Subway and he just buys a sandwich. And they sit there, and that was the hero's journey, right? So he goes up and buys this, and so they make this whole marketing campaign. Because what it's saying to you is that your call to adventure is if you want to lose weight, then we're going to be the guide that takes you there. We're not saying you will lose weight, we're going to be the guide that helps you get there. Notice the subtle difference. They're not making an outlandish, they're not saying you will be number one or you will lose weight. They say we will be your guide to help you get there on your journey towards it. Is it starting to sink in? So let's talk about your marketing before I sum this up. Your marketing, the questions you need to be asking about your content marketing strategy. Who is your hero? And a good way to find that, by the way, is to talk about the values that you have inside your company. You know, what is it that you hold dear? That's a good way to start to figure out who that hero is, right? It's about talking about values. What is their call to adventure? What is the journey they want to go on? What is it that they're looking to do? And are you their guide? Are you that source of knowledge, of trust, of likability that they can rely on to help them on this journey? And then whatever your offering is, whatever it is that you're selling, how does it help them on their journey, right? You're not promising an end result in this particular strategy. You were saying, I will help you get towards the end result. So how is what you're offering on their journey? Thinking it that way. And then finally, you measure by money. This is a commercial endeavor. For all the BS terms that we throw around it, are you measuring by money? Is it something that you have access to? Is it something that you're keeping track of? Because if you're not measuring by money, then you're not really knowing what you're doing. So, I'm going to end this with this next piece that I think represents probably the quintessential monomyth strategy ever produced. It's fairly old, so I think it still will have some resonance. But I want you to watch this next piece and ask yourself, who is the hero? Who is the guide? What is the call to adventure? Okay? What is not included is probably more important than what is included. And once this piece rolls, you're more than happy to take any questions. So be thinking of the hero's journey, of the hero, the guide, the call to adventure as we watch this next piece.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Thank you. So, can we get the house lights back up? And now the fun part. You can ask me all sorts of questions. Please. Oh, there we go.
Sean, where does branding come into play? Because it's an overused term, but how do you relate that to managing your brand to content marketing?
Branding is one of the bullshit terms that we like to throw around. And I'll use the end piece as an example. What is that brand, right? It is a branding piece, if you will, right? It's designed, and they talk about it as a branding piece, but it was not. Branding is about that identification of empathy for the hero that you're looking for. And I'm going to go back to that a lot because it's something we are very passionate about is this hero. I think branding is the storytelling that we do of the hero that we're trying to guide. That's where I would kind of put it into this place. Next question.
Sean, thanks for the wonderful presentation today. All right. Thanks for the wonderful presentation. You mentioned headlines as being 50% of importance in regard to writing content. What's your favorite way to come up with those headlines? Which tools do you use?
So, that's a great question. I am not nearly as qualified as our editorial team, and I would probably say the guy behind me, Mike Warren, would probably be much better. Who's giving Keynote tomorrow, by the way. He is much better at this. I would say for me personally, there is this idea of fascination and solution, right? There's this idea of, I want to say something weird combined with something that makes sense. So, for instance, the Lady Gaga Guide to Marketing. You're going to have to read it, right? You're just going to have to. The headline in and of itself is so compelling because it has something of fascination. Brian, just do a search for headlines and you'll get the Copyblogger and read out. There's an art form to headlines. For me personally, I always think of something that I want to argue with you about. I want to take something that you believe is true and say that it's wrong to force you, okay? So there's the two pieces I wrote. I've got a third piece coming out soon. But the one that was huge as far as reach was there's no ROI in social media marketing because it was something that everyone would disagree with. He's a lying bastard. I got to read what he says, right? I like to do that personally. I like to take something you believe is true and say that it's not because by throwing bombs, I can force you to read something. That's my personal technique. The other way is a lot of empowerment, the smart guy, the intelligent guy, the 10-step test lists do extremely well because everybody likes them. I always like the idea of modifying that with a role, the smart person's guide, right? So if you disagree with me, you're an idiot, right? But if you agree with me, you're smart. I like to throw those things in, but it's not, it's always tough. You're always out there, and one of the things you kind of end up doing when it comes to headlines is just throwing around the concept of people, And because if they say, well, tell me more, right? Well, what the hell do you mean by that, Sean? Then it's a good headline. Because it's doing the thing the headline's supposed to do, which is make you ask to read more, right? Get you more. So I think one of the other techniques is if you got some ideas for headlines, just throw them around, ask people, would they like to learn more about it, or did they think it's interesting, or just look at their face. Just look at their face. Because they'll be like, yeah, that's really great. Okay, so I think that, but Brian has a really good the science of headline writing and several options, and he does something that he doesn't call the Mad Lib version of headlines. There are kind of fill in the blank things. 10 things you must know about X, always been effective. Because you must know. Shit, I must know. Other questions? Got some more over here.
Hi, I love the presentation. I was going to ask you, what do you think the role of design is in this? I mean, you can have really great headlines, say it's in Comic Sans, or something like that. What is the real role of design in making that profit?
Has anyone ever seen the TV show Mad Men? Yeah. And Peggy Olson in her office, who sits in her office with her? The designers. Any ad agency that I know is worth a damn, the writer is sitting right next to the designer. I think in the online space, design is absolutely crucial because it is the only way to get people to, it enhances the usability of reading and it gives you authority. I will tell you now, and you've all done this, right? You'll hear about something and you'll go to their site and it looks like shit. You'll be like, man, I'm out here, okay? I don't care how good the copy is, if it looks like shit, you're gone. Design is absolutely part and parcel of the content marketing process because it builds authority. I can be respected because I look good, and I know that sounds really callous, but think about it. Pretty people get away with murder. Ugly people have to fight every day. Seriously. I mean, you've seen all the studies. Then people get away with murder, fat people don't. I mean, it's true. And so when you look at design, ugly sites are terrible. Beautiful sites, well shit, I don't know what this says, but it looks beautiful. It goes right. But if you pair your writing with your design, which is why in most ad agencies, the designer and the writer are stuck together at the hip, because the visual and the word have got to work together. And I think design is something that is truly an art form. I think Dallas could do a better job of designing, quite frankly. Modern design, and you can tell because we steal everybody else's design out there. If your site doesn't look like at least one of the more modernist sites, you've got a problem, because those sites are setting the tone that you are now being compared to. So I mean, things like leading and kerning and all these things that these actually matter in a web page. And luckily, with HTML5, cross that off the box bit, you can get away with a lot more artistic control. So did that answer your question?
Yes.
Yes.
Are you seeing blog writing moving more towards video blogs? Is that
videos are at an inflection point, to be certain. I mean, we had at DFW SEM a great presentation about the kind of the market of video. Yes, I do think that video and video blogging is going to be more than it is today. Production costs are cheap. We're going to see a lot more of it. But I would caution that, and we have Robert Riggs here too, who's a Peabody winning journalist, and he did a lot of video in Iraq, and got blown up. Literally, got shot by our troops. The thing about video is that you have to have a good story, right? This video that I showed you, and granted, the quality sucked, by the way, kind of agree, yet the story was powerful, right? Almost made you cry, right? Which is the intention. And so you sit there and you say video, yes, but if you don't have the mastery of the writing side, then who the hell cares? Because yes, the design, the visuals matter a lot, but it's the story that you're telling, it's the words. So yes, I think video blogging or videos in general are gaining much more at an inflection point because the cost of production is so cheap now. But yet the principles of good writing apply, of good design, of good layout, everything still apply. That's why content marketers do not fear the future, because I don't know what's going to happen in 5 years from now, is what's the next big thing that we all are talking about, right? Because the principles of content marketing will not change, ever. And we can embrace things that are coming new, we can test them, we can see if they work, because we measure by money. Tony. No, Tony, right. Wrong Tony.
I'll be quick. First of all, great presentation. Question your use of scantily clad African tribesmen at the beginning, but we'll talk about that later. One of the things that we run into a lot, especially when we're hiring and we're looking at people for who are doing this on their own, is a confidence in their writing ability, not being confident about taking spending 200 hours to write one piece. What advice would you give to some writers who some people who are interested in marketing but don't maybe have the confidence in their own writing skills and what they should be doing?
Good question. Okay, so I'll make it easy for all the budding writers out there. Your work sucks. Period. End of discussion. It sucks. Because you're just starting. The difference between those that start and those that never do is huge, because at least if you're starting, you'll get feedback. So let me give you, I first take the expectation down low. Your writing is going to suck for at least the first 50 articles you do. Okay, if you're starting a blog after this conference, your first 50 blog posts are going to suck. Just accept it. You will get better. But here's the beauty. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Really, the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is apathy. Right? And until you start writing in a way that really matters, right, then you can be afraid of failure. But the beauty is, by the time you start writing in a way that matters, you will have already learned the skill sets to be successful at it, hence failure will not necessarily be there. Think about it. If you're thinking that the writing thing is going to be something that's going to change the world. No! Your first writing thing is just your first piece of written work. So as a commercial side, what I would say is you need to write more, write often, write when you want to write when you don't want to write, keep freaking writing. In fact, we just put a thing on Pinterest, which is the 10 rules of writing. Write more, write when you don't want to, write all the freaking time. Write when you like it, write when you don't like it, write when you have something to say, write when you don't have something to say. You just have to write, because you have to start the process. Then what I would do is steal, okay? I do not believe in inventing things from scratch. I want to steal everything and claim it as my own. It's a much more successful strategy. Steve Jobs can tell you all about it. Or actually, what you need to do is you need to look at sites like copyblogger.com. Look at our writing tone and steal it. There's a reason why we write very short paragraphs and long copy. Steal it. Look at the headlines we have. Steal them. Steal everything that we do. And if you don't like us, go to Chris Brogan. Go to any other person that writing is really working and steal it. You know, in Hollywood, one of my very good friends is actually a producer of TV shows. He did The Firm on NBC. Some of these got canceled, but he got Hung on HBO. And he's, you know, and what he started is he reads scripts. I mean, agents bring him scripts. And so one of the tasks that if they see a writer that they like, is they'll ask them to write an episode for a show that they already know. So like they used to have people write shows for Sex and the City, purely on spec, to see if they can get the tone, inflection, the personalities in the written word through their writing. So they could look at something and say, I know Sex and the City, now we see how this guy would create this fantasy episode, if you will, to see how well they would write. So to your point, I would say, here's a story. I want you to write something that you think would fit on XYZ site. So it forces you to steal in your writing style. So all you have to do is make a decision. I want to write, because really in our industry, there's really three kind of major roles. The writers, the designers, and the statisticians, the programmers, the mathematicians, the people that are looking at the numbers, right? Programming certainly will throw that in there too. So those are 4 skills. So if you're not a programmer, you're not a mathematician, you're not a writer, you're not a designer, then you're either doing account management or you own the place, right? So I would say that for training writers is say, look, I want you to write something that would fit on Mashable.com, or I want you to write something that fits on Copyblogger, something like that. And evaluate the writing style, force them to steal, and then just keep them writing. Because the one thing that bothers the shit out of me is when people aren't writing all the freaking time. I mean, I have the luxury because I have an editorial team. I've got some of the best editors. I give everything I create up to either Sonia or Robert, and they completely make it 10 times better. I am lucky that I can sound intelligent because I've got the smartest writers in the world working for us. But if you don't have that, keep writing. Keep writing, keep writing, and then your comments, your engagement, you're not just bullshit term. Excuse me. But the fact that people leaving comments, sharing, all these things will start to see if it's resonating. And except for the fact that the first 6 months your writing's going to suck and nobody's going to care. But when they start caring, it's because you got really good at it. And then when you get good at it, you won't make mistakes. Yes?
When you steal material, what acknowledgement do you have?
All the love in the world, primarily a link. I mean, seriously, acknowledge who it is. Just give them links, you know, say, hey, by the way, I saw this story, I loved it. You know, do all the things that you can to show love online. Because it's funny because a lot of the people that come to Copyblogger are people that were fans and they communicate and said, I loved your piece, and they're going out of their way to say, you know, I love that story you did. I stole a version of it and put it on there, and trust me, we would go look at it, you know, which is part of the process you want. It's like, oh, they went and read my story. I would definitely give all the love in the world because it costs nothing. And, you know, if you show some love, maybe they will show some love back to you. Yes?
How effective is renting a list or partnering with a JV to help increase your exposure of your kick-ass content that you're creating?
Renting a list should be avoided at all fucking humanly possible cost. I'm sorry I use a lot of F-bombs, it's just who I am. Partnering, however, is different. If you have a product or service and you don't blog, then fine, partner with somebody who does. So my relationship with Brian Clark started very simple. I saw him speak at PubCon, asked him to speak at DFW SEM. He came, he spoke. I asked him how did he make his money. He said, I make $3 million a year by partnering with people and selling products to my audience, blah, blah, blah. I was like, you did what? I grabbed him afterwards, bought him a drink, and said, look, I'll give you 50% of this business if you will just be, you know, doing your mojo. Okay, blinded. I did it without, but I'm reckless that way. So I'm the CFO. I would say that partnering is good. But now, let me caveat that, because this is something that I do think gets lost. There are people out there that are really good at building the audience factory, right? They're drawing people in by any bullshit measurement we have of engagements, you know, et cetera. They have it. That's good. That's the first component of a good JV relationship. The second component is, can they get those people to buy something? Are they good at getting people to do a call to action? If you can't do that, then that JV purchase is going to be real one-sided, because they may have a list, right? But that list has not been nurtured, it's not been loved, it's not been tapped into to do something that had a monetary transaction side to it. So it's going to be very hard for that partnership to work. And I've seen two examples of this because at Copyblogger, we had a partnership with two different groups on our Scribe product line, which we're going to see Scribe today, if you want to see here. We had one group that had a list of, let's say, 30,000 emails, and another one with 250,000, all organically grown. Do you know which one performed better? Of course, the 30,000. It had been loved, it had been nurtured. They had been using it on a regular basis to transact something with them. The people on that list knew that they were going to be, going to buy something at some point. Versus the 250,000 one, which had not been loved, which had not been nurtured, which and I was just shocked. And Brian, of course, looked at me and goes, "Why are you freaking shocked?" It's called content marketing. It's called selling. It's a cycle. It's a process. Blah blah blah. Just having 250,000 because somebody said I want a free coupon to XYZ is not going to create a buying list. So my advice on that: if you don't blog, partner with somebody who does, that knows how to both build an audience and turn that into revenue.
I think we're going to wrap up. If you have more questions for Sean, you can see him. He'll be here, and he'll be back here at 2 p.m. on this track. Let's give him another round of applause.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed Sean's keynote. Now make sure and come back. I'm going to try to produce one of these videos a week. I got about 20 in the can from just this one conference, from the Emerging Tech Conference. Now if you like what I do, or what I'm doing here, I'd ask you to consider dilldomains.com. That's right, dilldomains.com the next time you buy a domain name or website hosting or anything. Dilldomains is basically my GoDaddy reseller account. Plain and simple. So if you like GoDaddy or using GoDaddy, please just consider buying your GoDaddy names and stuff through dilldomains.com instead. I make like $1 every time you do. In other words, your GoDaddy stuff through my reseller account will help me to support this show, okay? That's all. Well, that's it for today's show. So until next week, or might be later this week, who knows, the next episode, this is Gary Lee, the host, saying goodbye. And thanks for watching the first issue of Pickle TV.